The More Perfect Union is brought to you by HelloFresh, the leading meal delivery kit service. Visit HelloFresh.com and use promo code MOREPERFECT30 to save $30 off your first order.
Welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or, as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hello, I'm Kevin Kelton. I'm a moderate Democrat living in Los Angeles, California.
Hi there, I'm DJ McGuire, a conservative Democrat from Suffolk, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Kushmiter. I'm a super liberal Democrat in Kensington, Maryland. Like I have a cape. That's super.
Hello, I'm Molly Malloy Cooper. I'm a senior lecturer of economics at The Ohio State University, and I'm a conservative free market economist.
Hi, I'm Greg Matuzak. I'm a super liberal Democrat also, but capes are terrible, as we all know. And a veteran of many political campaigns from Cincinnati, Ohio. Come on, we've all seen The Incredibles.
Of course. No capes!
But what we are wearing, because tonight is Emmy night here at the More Perfect Union, so we're all in our Emmy night best. Everybody looks fantastic. Molly and Rebecca, I want to compliment you particularly on your gowns. They look lovely.
And thank you for that red carpet, DJ, Kevin. We really appreciate it.
Yes, really. Yeah.
The More Perfect Union can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and commentary. And this week, the commentary that everybody wanted to talk about in the news was Ted Cruz's sex life, because Senator Cruz...
And it's just Ted's. He's alone.
Just Ted's. Apparently, on Twitter, he liked a comment or a tweet that included a pornographic clip. Is that what happened?
That's, as I understand it, his Twitter account liked a pornographic video of some kind. I think initially he was trying to say that that his account was hacked, and then I think he just largely hoped that nobody paid any attention. I have to say, from my perspective, it does put a whole new spin on a politician with sticky fingers.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, he claimed it was a staff problem. We're like, yeah, staff, baby.
Ooh, how many double entendres can we get in here? Okay.
And he just figured it would work itself out, and I'm sure he was going to try to work it out himself.
He's going to beat this case. He's going to beat it.
Poor Ted, he was a beaten man this week.
But you know what I love most about this is it was like the most vanilla. Like, I think the tweet was literally referred to, I think the tweet was sexual positions. And that's the most, well, there's two things. One, it was called sexual positions. It's not even like good pornography. It's the pornography, like if you were an 11-year-old boy, you'd say, well, I'm interested in pornography. What would I look under?
That's not what I read in WAPO. It was a stepfather situation.
A stepfather situation? What does that mean?
You know, like some girl was not getting along with her stepfather, but by the end of the video, they were getting along just fine.
They came to an agreement. The other thing I like about it is he said it was a staff member who had... Anyone who's ever been on a campaign understands that if you get privileges to a candidate or an elected official, you have to have some social media training, or you have to be media savvy. They don't just hand it to another 60-year-old and say, have you ever worked on this Twitter? No, they give it to like 15-year-olds who live on Twitter. They know.
Okay, but are you trying to argue that Ted Cruz, who, whether you like him or don't, and frankly nobody likes him, is one of the smartest people around? He knows what happened to Anthony Weiner. He knows what happened to other people. Do you really believe that he was dumb enough to like a porno clip
Yes,
on
yes,
Twitter?
I think
just
his
don't buy
finger
it.
No.
slipped.
No.
No.
I
don't
think
think
it
it was
was
him.
him.
No, and no, I was swiping through my tablet the other day, and I accidentally went incognito, and so I'm like, well, if this is a thing, and I don't know how I did, but if I were going to like something and I was a public official, I would go incognito if I could figure out how to do it.
I think
Well, you know
I
who-
think it was one of his summer interns who went back to school and said to his buddies, "Hey, let's see if the password I got for Ted Cruz's Twitter account still works." And a bunch of drunk
Yeah.
college kids started liking stuff to see what would happen, because I bet Ted doesn't
Yeah.
treat his interns well, and they were out
Yeah.
for revenge.
Has
Good theory.
it ever occurred to any of you that perhaps Ted thought it might be seen as a sign of bipartisanship if he used his left hand?
I think it occurred to Ted because he said if he knew he could get this much publicity, he would have done it before the Indiana primary.
Well, that was a left-handed compliment. But you know who should be going incognito? Hillary Clinton. Because this woman, and I am holding for everybody, I'm holding my copy of
hardback.
What Happened, which I got the day it came out in hardcover, which I understand is selling at Costco now for about 39 cents. But it came out this week, and Hillary Clinton has this capacity to drive people crazier than, like, I don't know, a Gilbert Gottfried 9/11 comedy routine. She gets under people's skin in a way that I've never seen for any other human being. What is it about this person, Molly, that drives the right and the left and women and men and blind people and everyone else nuts?
Well, in this case, nope. People don't like a whiner. I mean,
Oh, but she's not whining.
she's
not.
so whining.
Oh, what?
Oh,
Okay, well, you
no.
didn't read the book, so.
Well,
but you've heard,
all
you've
right,
read
but
excerpts.
I've seen clips, and I've seen her interviewed by Matt Lauer, and you know, I will say one thing after all this, I definitely do not think I believe her when she says she's not running in 2020. If you're going
of course
on,
she's not
if you're
running.
if you're going out there and you're showing alternate nostril breathing, it's over.
But you really think it's whining? You really think that she just didn't have a story to tell and she's promoting it?
Yeah, well, I don't think that she is taking enough accountability for not going into the upper Midwest and for not having a message that resonated with the people in between the coast that were so much devastated by the last 8 years.
Okay, so let's talk
economically.
about that because I agree with you about the message, and I think it was political malpractice not to have a better, more succinct campaign message going into the campaign, not just one that you come up with at the last minute. So we agree there, Molly. But as you know, not making a campaign appearance in Wisconsin didn't lose the election for her, because even if she had carried Wisconsin and Michigan, she still would have been 20 electoral votes short. And she spent plenty of time in Pennsylvania, didn't carry that state. She spent plenty of time in North Carolina and Florida, didn't carry those states. So this argument that there was some grand campaign mistake made simply because she wasn't on the ground in Wisconsin when all of her surrogates were, that really is an unfair shot because it would not have changed the outcome of the election.
This reminds me of the Giuliani campaign in 1989, which, for those of you who don't know, which is probably everybody at this point, Rudy Giuliani ran for mayor of New York in 1989 and lost by about 1.5 2 points to David Dinkins. It was the closest race for mayor New York had seen in nearly 100 years. And I think his campaign manager told him, he said, the good news is you came closer than nearly anybody else did to winning without winning. The bad news is every single mistake was what hurt you. So the fact of the matter is every single point that Mrs. Clinton raises as to why she lost is right. In a race this close, each and every one of them made the difference. And every single issue that Mrs. Clinton's critics throw back at her for why she lost are also right. Because in a race this close, every single one makes the difference. The one I focus,
right.
yeah. So she has, in my opinion, she certainly has the right to put her story out there and see if she can monetize what happened to her. That is what
Kevin gave her the money.
Exactly.
I gave her the money.
Kevin
yeah.
said, "Take my
Yeah,
money." So
I'll
there
buy
you
the
go.
book. But even before this, even before the election, I've known people who, if you just bring up her name, they just go nuts. There has been, she brings out the worst in people. And you're right.
Yeah, that was my point. Why is that? What is it about this one woman?
Because she has the balls to keep trying. Because she never sat down when people told her to sit down. And for some people,
I think some of it does go back
for some
to
people,
it.
that rubs them very much the wrong way. That she never knew her place. And I think she did know her place. I think she's as smart as she thinks she is. I think she's as qualified as she thinks she is. And she knows her place. And the fact that nobody else wanted to give her place of pride, that's their fucking problem. Not hers.
I think there are, if you actually look at her career, there are a number of things that she did that upset a large chunks of the American people that have nothing to do with her gender. Now there are a lot of people who are upset at her because of her gender, but there are also a lot of people who are upset at her because of everything she did at the Rose Law Firm. I've said it on this podcast before. I'm saying it now. It was her fingerprints that were all over the Whitewater fiasco, not her husband's. So, to a large extent, she kept her husband in the clear politically, and that made a lot of sense when he was the politician and the candidate. It makes less sense now that she is the politician and the candidate. More people remember that from the 1990s, or particularly remember her 1990s resistance to what she did in the 1970s and the 1980s. I say this as somebody who, I had issues with her for 20 to 25 years, and yet I voted for her anyway. So I've seen this from both sides. But I can tell you that there were a lot of people who very seriously questioned her ethical character, and it goes all the way back to her willingness to be a part of a very thoroughly corrupt Arkansas Democratic machine. In the end,
Respectfully disagree, DJ.
In the end,
disagree.
she never escaped that, and that is the great tragedy of her political career.
Here's the thing, DJ. Historically, you're correct, but no one knows history the way you do. And frankly, if there's 100 million Americans who hate this woman's guts, give or take 20 million, only a fraction of them remember or know what Whitewater was. This antipathy towards her is in people that aren't old enough to know what Whitewater is or heard of Whitewater and don't care about it. It's about who she is now.
Now it stays. I think it stays in the collective conscious. I see what DJ's saying.
And given the fact that, if memory serves, it was the baby boom generation that was the strongest vote against her in 2016. And if I'm wrong, then listeners, please correct me in comments when Kevin puts the stuff on open fire. But if memory serves, it was the baby boomers who were her weakest age-wise constituency. They're the ones who remember the whole Whitewater investigation. They're the ones most likely to bring Whitewater against her and to bring the actions of the Arkansas Democratic machine against her. And again, because the race was so close, everything matters. People who are upset at that matter. People who are just young millennial chauvinists, they matter too, unfortunately. Every single
I think the young
mistake
millennial
hurt her.
problem was the Bernie problem. So I think it was twofold. The baby boomers voted against her, and the millennials didn't show up because they were upset
I agree with
about Bernie.
that.
Yeah, but how much of the I voted for Bernie but I won't vote for Hillary had to do with chauvinism? I refuse to believe chauvinism was not a factor. I think there may be other factors, but I refuse to believe chauvinism was not a factor in the millennial Bernie vote that did not vote for Hillary in November.
No, they were more upset by her corporatism than anything else in the speeches and things like that.
I think it's everything. I think she lost some votes to chauvinism. She lost some votes to corporatism. She lost some votes to sexism, and she lost some votes because she was not a strong enough candidate. Yeah, it's all there. But, so let's move on because that's looking back and life is about looking forward. And the person who seems to be really looking forward more than anyone else these days is one Donald J. Trump, because he finally seems to have realized that his friends on the right are not necessarily his friends, and maybe the grass is greener on the left side of the political spectrum.
I wouldn't say that I don't know that it's that he thinks the grass is greener on the left side of the political spectrum. I think what we saw was an accident of timing. Chuck and Nancy are good friends. Chuck and Nancy.
Chancey.
Chancey. We're going with Chancey.
Chancey. They're a lovely couple.
Big Chuck and Nancy, Harvey and Irma. We've got all these really great old-fashioned names in the news these days. I think Chuck and Nancy struck while an iron was hot. They saw an opportunity to get in the White House and make their case. And I think that they came out of the Chinese food dinner about DACA. And the rumor is that they chose Chinese food because Trump feels really a kinship with Schumer on China policy. And that's why they chose Chinese food.
Is that true?
Are you serious, or is that a joke?
I heard this on Pod Save America. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's hilarious.
Is there a correspondent theory with the chocolate cake that was for dessert?
It was the most beautiful cake you've ever seen. This gorgeous chunk of chocolate cake. It was beautiful. It was bigly cake. I don't know. I didn't know
the fact that American policy is being set by menus and catering scares the piss out of me.
You know what? This would not be the first time. But anyways, I think what happened was
taco salad would have been too obvious.
Yeah.
But you have to get the taco bowls from Trump Tower because they make the best taco bowls. Let's not forget.
Right.
And there are no taco trucks because Hillary wasn't elected. Another thing that we can blame the Birdie Bros for, that we don't have taco trucks on every corner. It's awful. Awful. The humanity.
So back to DACA. Where are we now?
So back to Chuck and Nancy. I think they managed to get this invitation, and they walked into the room and started talking to him, sweet talking him, because I think Nancy Pelosi spent the past 8 months sitting there, observing Trump, figuring out what makes him tick. And she took this opportunity to elicit some kind of agreement with him on DACA. Yes, I'll sign it. I will sign it. Well, what about my wall? Oh, yeah, your wall. We'll get to your wall another time. We can't talk about the wall tonight. Look, we're almost done with the Chinese food. We got to move on. There's not time for the wall. And they walked out of the meeting and hit send, and won the press cycle on this, leaving Trump to play cleanup. And the result is, I don't think there's a loss for the Democrats on this. Either they get the agreement and they get DACA, and Trump signs it, or they don't, and it's Trump's fault because he can't make nice with Paul and Mitch, who are not as cute a couple as Chuck and Nancy. They come out as Pitch, and that's no good.
I have a different theory, and this actually came from my pharmacist, who's good people, and he believes he's good
food
people.
And pharmacists tonight.
Food and pharmacists. My pharmacist is a smart guy, and I'm going to steal his theory because he's not here right now. But he honestly told me that Trump, and this is true, loves ratings. He loves ratings, and right now his ratings are not so good. And this would be a great twist in mid-season. This would be a great mid-season twist. What if the villain would all of a sudden change over to the other side? What great ratings this would be. Okay. But all kidding aside though, what if he's like, oh, my approval numbers are bad. How do I change them? Make a deal with the other guys. Everyone would love me right now. And even still, most of his base hated his immigration, didn't like DACA, but they loved the Dreamers. Okay, so this is what he really did want.
These are like the people who hate Obamacare but love the ACA.
Senator Tom Cotton, said that this was not going to happen. He didn't think it was going to happen. But let's be honest. Tom Cotton is about as sharp as a bag of wet mice. I mean, he is not a bright fellow. So whatever he's saying right now, and he's everywhere right now saying, this isn't happening, Trump is still our guy, blah, 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 blah. It's going to happen. And Trump is going to fall right into the left. And it's happening not only with DACA, and I'll segue to the next one.
Well, hold on. Before we segue to anything else, I want to weigh in on this because I agree with you, Greg, and I respectfully disagree with something that Rebecca said, which is I do think there's a win. I do think there's a win in this for Trump.
Tom Cotton is dumb?
That he's a bag of wet mice. No. I agree.
I've seen sharper doorknobs. I mean,
no. I'm not commenting on Tom Cotton, although I'm not impressed with him either. I do think there's a win for Trump in this. I think it's a big win. I think he is going to improve his poll numbers with this somewhat slight pivot to the left, and I don't think it's going to hurt him with the base. Because when push comes to shove in both 2018 and 2020, which we're going to discuss in a moment, his base is going to come back to him because they still hate Nancy Pelosi, hate the Democratic Party, hate liberals, and hate the establishment in Washington. So he's not going to lose his base over this, regardless of what Rush Limbaugh and Laura Ingraham say and Ann Coulter say. They're wrong. They're out of the mainstream. They don't get it. He is not going to lose his base over this, but he is going to improve his poll numbers, in my opinion. So I think this could be actually a big win for the president.
But they're not poll numbers. They're ratings.
I don't think that this was a loss for the Democrats, but I don't think it's necessarily a loss for Trump either. And I'm going to disagree with the fact that it is not necessarily him going to the other side. I mean, he's not a conservative. He never has been. He has some conservative leanings on certain things like the wall. But other than that, he's if anything, a New York Republican, which anywhere else in the country qualifies him as a Democrat. I mean, so he'll go to whatever side helps him accomplish and move things forward. And he right now needs to get some meaningful legislation passed. So.
But Molly, do you think there's going to be a challenge from the right in 2020?
I think there will be a challenge from the right in 2020 if he doesn't get things done. If he does get things done and can get his, whether you call them polls or ratings up, then nobody will challenge a more popular incumbent. But if nothing gets done and he remains this unpopular, then yes, he will have a challenge.
I mean, to get something done, he needs McConnell and Ryan to get on board. I mean, if we're talking about DACA in particular, he needs McConnell and Ryan to get on board with DACA, and I don't know that they will. I certainly don't think the Freedom Caucus will.
Well, the Freedom Caucus won't, but if he can pick off some, on something like DACA, he can bring votes from the other side. I mean, that's not too hard.
Who do you guys think might successfully or effectively challenge him from the right?
Nobody.
A senator from Utah?
No.
Perhaps?
No.
Yes.
Mike, as much as I admire and respect Mike Lee, he does not...
How did you know it was Mike Lee?
Of course it's Mike Lee, because Orrin Hatch is too old. The simple...
No, Orrin Hatch...
Egg McMuffin from... Egg McMuffin. Evan McMullin, isn't he from Utah too?
Yes.
He's not a senator.
It's not Evan McMullin. He's not a senator.
Evan
McMullin,
McMullin, or English Muffin, as people confuse him, is from Utah. However,
but it's not him. It's Mike Lee. It's Mike Lee.
There is a reason that no incumbent has been denied renomination if they asked for it since 1880, and that is
what's that?
That was 1884. That was Chester Arthur. He was rejected for James G. Blaine, who, by the way, lost to Grover Cleveland. But the fact of the matter is, Trump's people are essentially wedded to him, they have converted to him, and they are not going back. He can simply blame everyone around him, and they will fall for it. The same sort of nonsensical, idiotic campaign that got him nominated in 2016 will easily get him renominated in 2020.
I have a really hard time applying history and what has always happened to this particular president.
And I can understand that, but the fact of the matter is, Trump will spend next year attempting to remove people in the elected officials in the Republican Party whom he does not like, and he will succeed in a number of areas, and he will succeed in enough of them to ensure that he will not face any credible challenge in 2020. That is my prediction. And granted, my predictions have a history of being horribly wrong.
Horribly wrong.
Horribly wrong.
Horribly, let's all say it.
And
Horribly
I'm
wrong.
just agreeing with you. I'm just agreeing with you when I say horribly, tragically wrong.
Yes, I understand that. But he is, by 2020, there will be some form of tax reform, even if it is merely symbolic. There will be some sort of reform of the ACA. It won't be repeal, but it will be some sort of reform, and he will sign it and he will take credit for it or something. And he will be in a position where he will have greater control over the Republican Party, certainly than he did in 2016 when he won the nomination anyway. So I really don't... There will be Republicans who will attempt to challenge him. I don't see any of them beating him.
So I assume you're not going with your.
Make it expensive.
You're not going with your new party, and that he won't be there anyway because he's going to be impeached by then.
Oh no, I think there are far too many people in my party who have deluded themselves into thinking that they will face President Pence in 2020. They won't. They'll face President Trump in 2020.
President Pence will be harder to beat than President Trump anyway.
President Trump won't be easy to beat, just so we're clear here.
Oh, yeah, and, I keep seeing articles where they say if the left thinks that 2020 is going to be an easy win, nobody thinks that. I don't know why they write these headlines. Who in their right mind thinks that Trump is going to be, beating Trump is going to be a layup in 2020? But looking at the 2020 Democratic field, I still think that there's three people who have any real shot at the nomination. I think Elizabeth Warren is going to run and has a very strong shot. I think Bernie Sanders is going to run and obviously is a leading contender. And I think Joe Biden, if he wanted to throw his hat into the ring, even at his advanced age, could be a tremendously competitive candidate in the primaries and could, win the nomination and win the election. But I saw something this week that I thought was kind of interesting. A lot of people were speculating that Biden might run, and out of friendship and loyalty to his former two-term vice president, Barack Obama would agree to be on the ticket as his vice presidential candidate, and you'd have a Biden-Obama ticket to mirror the Obama-Biden ticket of the 2008 and 2012. Does anybody agree with me that that is legally not possible? Am I the only one that
legally
thinks?
Not possible. Not
unconstitutional.
So unconstitutional.
I think I don't know about that. I think anything's possible nowadays with this government.
Well,
I honestly do.
Have you taken a look at the Supreme Court lately?
Oh, good. Right.
Well,
anything is possible.
So let's say, we're not going to go into the weeds.
That's
here.
not possible.
There are three clauses of the Constitution. I believe it's the 10th Amendment, the 12th Amendment, and the 22nd Amendment that address this issue in some form or fashion. And a lot of people will read them differently or, talk about sequence and say there's no wording that says that someone who served 8 years as president can't be a nominee or a candidate for vice president. And then if he becomes president, well, that's that. There are other people who take a more strict interpretation of all three clauses together and say, look, it's legally just not possible. It's not what the framers intended, or it's not what the writers of the 22nd Amendment intended.
And probably constitutional law professor Barack Obama would agree.
And
right.
It also just doesn't make sense from a political perspective. Yes, Barack Obama is well liked among Democrats. Yes, he has a personally high approval relative to other Democrats among Americans. But that doesn't change the fact that if Joe Biden were to run and if he were to be nominated, and I should say again that I would prefer that the Democrats nominate my choice, Congressman John Delaney. But if it were to be Joe Biden, let me try this again. If Joe Biden were to win the nomination, there would be far greater upside to reaching out to one of the younger Democrats, one of the Democrats who has better appeal maybe to the quote-unquote centrist wing of the party. I'm thinking of someone like D.C. Mayor
Tammy Duckworth.
No, I'm not thinking Tammy Duckworth as much as I'm thinking D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. I frankly think...
I don't know. I like Tammy Duckworth.
I frankly think whoever is nominated for president by the Democrats should nominate Muriel Bowser as their running mate. But that's just me. But my point is the fact that you have thrown out other names out there tells me, and should tell whoever the nominee is, that there are far better and more efficient and productive alternatives than Barack Obama. Barack Obama is very popular among Democrats, and I get that, but bringing him back into the mix is probably not something he would want to do. And again, I think they're really, Democrats need to build up their bench, and you don't build up your bench by reaching to a former president, nominating him vice president, even if it is constitutionally permissible, which I'm not certain it is, but I'm not a lawyer.
You know what? I think that the Democrats need to look to someone fresh. And you know what else is fresh?
What is fresh?
HelloFresh.
HelloFresh.
And the More Perfect Union is proud to present a message from our sponsor, HelloFresh, the leading meal delivery kit service. And I had the chance to try this product. They were nice enough to send me several of their meals to test out at home. Anyone who knows me knows that I can boil some water and maybe cook some spaghetti or throw a steak on the grill, but that's about it. But with these pre-packaged meal services, they're amazing. And I've actually had the chance to try 3 different ones that are out on the market now. I won't mention their competitors' names, but HelloFresh is as good, if not better, than the other ones out there. And I have tried at least 3 of them. I cooked one last week with my 16-year-old daughter. We made this pork l'orange with a kale, a pecan salad. She wouldn't eat the kale. I could not sell her on the kale. I ate that. I liked it.
I like kale.
I got my daughter eating pork, which she would never try before. So, I mean, you guys have kids. Do you have the same battle as I do, getting them to expand their menu and their palate?
My daughter hasn't eaten anything but cheese in 2 weeks. She basically is a dairy product. She started pronouncing it as if it's French. She's like, "Can I have some shiz, Mom?" As if she's like trying to sound sophisticated.
My understanding is that HelloFresh has 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff to make sure that your meals are nutritionally balanced. And we know how important nutrition is to Greg.
Going back. Yeah, let's get that. First of all, go for the low-hanging fruit. Go ahead. But 2, tonight we made dinner as a family, and 1, it took an hour and a half, which, well, that's once again. But 2, my wife made me go to the market twice because I kept forgetting things. But she asked me for like these exotic spices like teriyaki. I was like, what the hell is teriyaki? And then like these other exotic grains like rice. And I was like, are you serious, woman? Rice?
And HelloFresh has 3 menu options every week. They have their classic menu, their veggie menu, and their family menu, which is more kid-friendly. Customers can order 3, 4, or 5 different meals a week, and it's designed for either 2 or 4 people. So if you have a large family, you order the 4-people kid-friendly thing. 13 new recipes every week to choose from, and they just introduced breakfast options, which we found out last week is going to change Rebecca's life.
It's going to change my life. Breakfast for dinner. I'm telling you guys. Little French toast and a little bacon. We are a happy crew here.
And you can do it all for less than $10 a meal. And if you would like $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com and enter promo code MOREPERFECT30 to get $30 off your first box of HelloFresh. So again, promo code MOREPERFECT30, the number 30, it's basically half price for your first week's delivery.
That's awesome.
I want everybody to go to HelloFresh, put in More Perfect 30, try the product, and you will be a better human being for it.
It's a big promise.
I think they can deliver on that. I really do.
You'll be a better fed human being, certainly.
And you know what would make us all better human beings? if we had a better medical system and a better healthcare system in this country. So what do you guys all think of the Bernie Medicare for All train that everybody was jumping on this week? Is it for real?
I'm astonished that I don't have Medicare. I just looked in my wallet, and I do not have a Medicare card yet. I feel like Bernie's failing me. And I was reading all about this plan. I was following what Bernie was doing all week, and there are a couple big things that he's missing, and one of them is a Democratic majority. So if you want Medicare, you're going to have to vote in 2018. Otherwise, this is just another chapter in Bernie's life story, which is called Read Twice and Referred to Committee.
I love how everybody's getting so excited that he has like 17 co-sponsors. Like that makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah. But none of them are Mitch McConnell or Lamar Alexander. So sorry, if you can't even get it to subcommittee, it's not happening. This is entirely theoretical. It's a statement of purpose.
So here's my question. Why are all of these Democratic presidential wannabes jumping on a bandwagon that's not leaving the station? What is the point of Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or 13 or 14 other Democratic senators sponsoring a bill that they know is not going to happen in the next 20 years?
This is tribal signaling.
Because the bandwagon that's not moving is the safest bandwagon to be on.
Yeah, this
why?
This is about tribal signaling to the quote to the base. It is the assumption among these candidates that whoever will push hardest to the left will win the nomination. Unfortunately, it will also ensure that the Democrats will be beaten by President Trump in 2020, because the left is not where elections are won. The center is where elections are won. More to the point, this particular bill, the one that Sanders is proposing, is not actually is the system. Let me rephrase that. The system that Senator Sanders is proposing in his bill is not actually one that is employed in any other advanced economy on Earth. The closest that come to it are within the Anglosphere, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. But they all have very strong provincial governments that actually run health insurance and health care, which means citizens of those countries can vote with their feet if they don't like the health insurance and healthcare system where they live. They all have some sort of private insurance supplement. For the United Kingdom, it's for everything. For Canada, it's for dental and vision. For Australia, it is for certain folks above a certain income. You either get a private insurance supplement or you pay a penalty. None of that is in place in Sanders' bill. Sanders' bill is actually more government intensive and more government monopolistic than any of those three. And it is in the complete opposite direction that continental Europe has gone in, which continental Europe has gone in the multi-payer direction. Germany has over 200 insurers, they call them sick funds, that are funded in part by premium payments for employees and employers. They are tightly regulated, and as I understand it, in Germany they are non-profit. In Switzerland they are for-profit, but they're largely the same Bismarckian type system, named after Otto von Bismarck, who came up with the first one back in the 19th century. The point is, what Sanders wants to do is something no other advanced economy has done. Period. He would like you not to know that, but I am telling you otherwise. And for all the Democratic candidates for president who think that they have to go far left or hard left on economic issues, they are in for a very rude shock in 2020. The voters most likely to peel off Donald Trump and go to the Democrats are voters who are economically conservative and socially liberal. Sanders' bill does nothing to win them over. Donald Trump did more to win them over by moving the Democrats' way on DACA than any of the Democratic candidates did, except mine, John Delaney, by adopting this idiotic proposal.
I don't know. It's John Delaney on Conyers' bill, because Conyers has been introducing a universal health care bill for decades, ever since John Dingell Sr. stopped doing it.
He has indeed. Conyers has, but Delaney's plan is to allow folks 55 and older to buy into Medicare. It does not disrupt a private insurance system that, let's face it, for anywhere from 3/5 to 2/3 of Americans, is something that they're largely okay with. And that's one of the many problems with Sanders' proposal, is that it assumes that everybody hates the insurance that they have now, and there are tens of millions of Americans who are quite fine with the health insurance they have now and will not be happy if it suddenly disappears for a government program over which they feel they have no control.
It also assumes that the people who work for the insurance companies don't like their jobs and want to see them vanish within the next 4 years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, but Rebecca, I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
too much about that. You and I both know what those private insurers will do. They will become government contractors for the great
absolutely.
Medicare program, and they will actually be happier because all of the risk that comes with being a private insurer will go away with being a government contractor. They'll offload that all to the federal government.
But in terms of this being a campaign issue, you and I read the fine print, DJ, because we're dorks and we might have too much time on our hands.
Indeed.
But the average voter will not, and they're just going to hear, yo, Al Franken is for Medicare for All. I love this guy. And they won't have really looked into it. And they certainly don't know that Otto von Bismarck was coming up with variants of this in Europe. However many years ago. I wasn't actually listening to you that closely.
That's quite all right. But the fact of the matter is you're also going to have a lot of people who have generally been born and bred to hate Democrats for rather insidious reasons. And all they will hear is Democrats want to do single payer and socialized medicine and thoroughly mess up your insurance because they hate you. And they will listen to
Those
that.
people spell socialized with an SH in the middle, so.
Yeah, but they still...
Single payer
Yeah,
is
but they
still
still vote.
polling terribly. It's still not polling well.
It doesn't
I
poll
mean,
well.
they want, as much as Bernie Sanders and other people that are signing on to this bill want people to want it, they don't want it.
Right, but that was the folly for one Hillary Clinton. She supported universal health care, and people thought there was a difference between universal health care and single-payer health care, and felt that the term universal health care was a sham. I agree with you, DJ. I agree with everybody here. Medicare for all, in the abstract, if we were starting from scratch, might be a good system. But until you can figure out the cost structure of it, until you can tell me what the tax rate is going to be, because it's got to be upwards of 60 to 65% at a minimum to cover everybody in the country with health care. And Americans just aren't going to go for a country where you're shelling out 65% of your, disposable income in taxes.
And to be fair, the rest of the developed world doesn't necessarily go with that either. I mean, Great Britain's highest tax rate right now is 45%. Any talk of moving that up to 50% would cause very serious problems in the United Kingdom. Canada's the province that has the highest tax rate in Canada is Quebec. Their highest income marginal tax rate is about 53%. The Parti Québécois recommended raising that when they were in power, and they were promptly thrown out of power by the voters in 2014. So this isn't just an American issue. This is something that the rest of the world doesn't really like higher taxes either. We just tell ourselves that they like higher taxes because we like to think that they're better than us for some utterly ridiculous reason. But, they're just as human as we are.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how you do it, DJ, because I can barely remember my Social Security number. But you know who does know my Social Security number? Whoever it is that hacked into Equifax this week. Because I checked, and I happen to be in the elite group of the 140 million people whose information was indeed hacked. And I had to go through the whole process of freezing my credit reports and asking for credit reports and other stuff that took a lot of time and money and was really annoying. And I had to give them more information. That's the other thing. Because they screwed up with my personal information, I had to then give them the same information again, plus my credit card number. So,
Why the hell weren't they freezing everyone's credit automatically? I'm sorry, if you're a credit reporting agency and somebody hacks you, you hit freeze on the whole damn system and give us all a break. You shouldn't be putting us through this.
And what did they do instead of doing that?
They asked for your credit card information.
No, what did
No,
they
they
do,
sold
sir?
their stock.
Yes, the senior executives of Equifax decided to keep it mum, but to sell $1.8 million worth of stock and stock options so that they would not lose money when this became public, because, of course, the stock did tank this week. Well, last week when all this became public.
Didn't Martha Stewart go to prison for something like that?
Well, it's not inside information if you have a right to know it. So it wasn't technically inside information. But I'm sure there's something else they did that's illegal. I'm sure that they will be prosecuted for this, and rightly so. 2 of them have already apparently left the company, but someone will track them down and prosecute them.
I eagerly await the Showtime show Billions putting their take on this fiasco. I guarantee you Bobby Axelrod made a ton of money over this.
I don't know who that is either.
He's a character.
It's a good show. It's a good show.
If he's not played by a Kardashian or a Canadian journalist, I know nothing.
Speaking of people that we know and don't know, you know whose name I didn't know until just this week? Jemele Hill. I had never heard of this person. Yeah. Apparently, she's a very talented sports reporter for ESPN, and now seems to be on the FBI's 10 most wanted list because of some tweet.
FBI, if you spell it Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah.
Just because she made a tweet which was pretty strongly worded, but I thought we had something called freedom of speech in this country.
Well,
we do.
So why doesn't she?
She does.
So this...
Yeah,
then why is she being singled out by her employer for being a bad sports reporter?
Whoa,
no. She's being singled out by Sarah Huckabee Sanders because she's an asshole.
No.
ESPN spoke to her and read her the Riot Act.
No.
And she may still get suspended.
She didn't get suspended.
She did not get suspended, and
they asked her to apologize because ESPN got under a lot of fire because they have suspended and or fired people who have made comments that were considered to be inappropriate on the left side of the aisle. Those people get fired. If you say something that ticks off people on the right, they ask you to apologize, and nothing else becomes of it.
You know who sounds whiny now? Come on.
Wait.
I'm explaining the controversy. I honestly, personally do not care. I'm explaining the controversy.
Okay, fair enough.
ESPN is based in Bristol, Connecticut. So they have a New England Northeast view of the political spectrum, which is not quite the national view of the political spectrum. Now, this does not mean that anything should happen to Ms. Hill. I've actually heard her commentary. I've seen her on TV. She is well-versed. She is smart. Nothing should happen to her. But for years, ESPN, I fear, has assumed that if something someone said upset their buddies in Connecticut, then it must upset the whole country, which is not quite true. And I think they ended up putting themselves in a bit of a pickle. Had they been more, not quite more respectful, but had they been more condoning, if you will, of folks who chimed in from the right on a political issue, and they have been far less condoning of folks chiming in from the right than chiming in from the left, unless it's Skip Bayless, which is a whole other issue, then it would have been easier for them to sail through this without any trouble. If they actually punish or fire Ms. Hill, I think they are in serious trouble because I think that's a mistake.
But don't we want? But this is an issue. NPR did a story about this. Don't we want employers to have? Do we or don't we? This is a question, serious one. To have that ability, if you put a tweet up that your employers don't agree with, do you want them to have that ability to fire you? And right now, it's something that you say something about the president. But what if you're saying like Nazi things? What if you're saying
the fact of the matter is, Greg, the First Amendment includes freedom of association, and if an employer chooses not to associate with you over something that you said politically, they are well within their rights to do so. The question, the question then becomes in exercising of their constitutional rights, do corporations do stupid shit like fire someone who shouldn't be fired? That's a very open.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that.
And your viewers and your customers have a right to not associate with you too. And
right.
They get themselves into trouble.
We've seen this before. Yeah. We've seen this before. Words have consequences. The issue that I have is that the president has brought the White House into this and has asked a private company to fire someone.
Oh yeah, that's
over
utterly,
freedom of speech.
that there is utterly stupid, and it's mainly, in my opinion,
That
mainly distraction.
is my issue.
This is a
Right.
White House.
So-
this is a White House that has shifted centerward and made deals with the Democrats and know that there may be issues with its base, and figures,
Right.
okay, God forgive me for being cynical, but you have to imagine that there are a lot of people in the Trump administration who think, okay, the base may be upset at us about DACA, about the supposed pivot that Trump is doing, about the will he or won't he actually withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, and, well, it depends on who you talk to these days. How can we ensure the base maintains with us? Oh, I know. Go after an African-American woman who criticized us. Yeah, that keeps the base in line. I think that's entirely what was behind Ms. Huckabee Sanders insisting that this was a fireable offense. This was about finding a convenient target for the base to get angry at to keep the base in line.
Yeah, this could be.
Yeah.
It's entirely,
Could be.
I mean, I think we sometimes give this White House way too much credit for planning.
My concern for all this is the world has changed so much in the last 15 years. We all are now media stars. Okay, it used to be that there were 3 networks, and then there were 5, and then there were 25. But with Facebook and Twitter, we are all on media every day, some people more than others. And I'm not sure we want a society where one slip-up costs you a job or a career. Again, this is a moving target, and obviously there are certain things that someone could say that, yes, a company has to take action. But I hope that that is by far the last place that companies go, and not the first place. Again, I know that Ms. Hill now has not been, maybe she was mildly reprimanded, but she hasn't been placed on administrative leave. She hasn't been suspended. But I am concerned about this idea that if you slip up in any way, because we're all in conversations like this, like we're on right now, we're all in conversations like this every day on Facebook and on Twitter. And just putting your foot in your mouth once can cost you a job, which means your kids may have to scale back on eating. You may lose a home. College may become out of the question for a student who is counting on mom or dad's income to help defray the cost of tuition. This affects real lives, and I just don't want us to be such a cavalier society that it's like, well, he said it, there has to be a consequence. He shouldn't have said it, therefore, goodbye job. I'm really worried about that society.
And the question that a lot of people on the right would have, Kevin, is where was your concern for that when the head of Mozilla expressed a very personal opposition to marriage equality and lost his job within a week? I mean, this is not just something that affects the left. It also affects the right. And I think what we are essentially going through is a reassessment of what is and what isn't good manners. And you're going to have folks who are going to be confused because something that they thought was good manners 20 years ago and might have actually been good manners 20 years ago is not good manners now. And we as a society need to sort this sort of thing out. We are in flux in terms of what is and what isn't offensive, what
is and what isn't public.
Right, what is and what isn't public. Exactly. These are things we are still trying to sort out. And unfortunately, we will get to a consensus at some point that most Americans will agree with. And 20 years from now, our children and our grandchildren will look back and go, well, what were you arguing about? Of course what you came up with makes sense. But because we're going through it now, it doesn't feel like it makes sense. And unfortunately, people are going to be hurt by it. I hope Ms. Hill is not one of them.
Well, and at some point, employers are going to have to put in black and white in a statement that all new employees sign as they're being onboarded, explaining what is and isn't acceptable public speech in order to remain an employee of this company. It's just everyone's going to have to make the criteria abundantly clear.
Agreed.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
how it's gonna have
a
to
little
be.
concerned about that. You may be right, Rebecca. That may be where we end up. I'm not sure that's the place that I would like us to end up. I think the employers have to become more tolerant about who
No, I
is
think
representing their
employers do
country.
have to become
Their-
more tolerant. Absolutely, and
Yeah.
there needs to be sort of a consensus among employers that what happens on your Facebook page stays on your Facebook page. But
and this is true
in the
for
ca-
students applying to college. You know, I
Right.
don't think that 16-year-olds
But
should
that needs, but
lose
it
out
needs
on
to
an
be made
opportunity to go
abundantly
to.
clear. Because certain positions require certain levels of discretion that are different. Joe Walmart greeter doesn't need to have the same level of attentiveness to his statements online that frontman for major media outlet needs to have. It's just
Okay.
it's a different it's a different job qualification.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be made abundantly clear, and the employers need to be proactive about it so that people aren't surprised when they find out that their statement on Twitter is going to have a negative impact of their lives. Everyone needs to know what the rules are instead of making them up as we go along.
So with that, we want to thank everybody for sticking with us and listening to the podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast. And share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. If you like discussing politics and you want to debate with us between shows, there's a Facebook group called Open Fire Politics. We're all there, and we'd love to see you there too. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, HelloFresh. The More Perfect Union is proud to have them on our team. And remember, if you go to HelloFresh.com and use promo code MorePerfect30, you'll get $30 off your first order. So with that, any last words, any shout-outs to family?
My very Republican, Trump base supporting father greeted me this week out of the blue saying, you know, that Kasich governor, he's an asshole. Out of the blue. I had nothing to do with it. I thought it was my birthday.